Holger Rune didn't intend to let it slip, but the moment the syllables escaped his lips, accompanied by that rogue, unbidden smirk and the weight of her name hovering between him and the reporter, there was no hitting rewind. It started as a routine, low-stakes chat, just a standard filler query regarding his peers, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, he dropped the bomb, Alex. The hesitation was palpable, his gaze flickering away, his whole vibe shifting gears in the span of a heartbeat. And you better believe the entire tennis ecosystem caught every single micro-expression. That instant converted a quiet personal appreciation into the sport's loudest headline, igniting furious discussions about boundaries, fame, and the chaos that ensues when two national icons collide in a digital frenzy they never summoned. Within the high-stakes arena of the Pro Tour, certain competitors haul a lot more than just graphite rackets and gym bags onto the clay and grass. They shoulder the collective dreams of a homeland, the crushing anticipation of millions, and the lonely duty of flying their flag solo at the pinnacle of an individual game. It is a suffocating, solitary load to bear, a burden that only a tiny, exclusive fraternity of athletes on this planet can genuinely comprehend. Holger Rune, the Danish dynamo known for his volcanic passion and lethal ground strokes, had evolved into precisely that figure for his nation. At only 21, he had already bulldozed his way into the world's top 10, taken down Grand Slam royalty, and cemented his status as one of the tour's most electric performers. His ascent was not merely rapid, it felt inevitable, almost required. It had been generations since Denmark boasted a titan of this caliber, and Rune donned that duty like battle armor, fighting through every point as though his country's dignity hinged on where the ball landed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the tour in the WTA, another prodigy was navigating her own version of the pressure cooker. Alex Eala, the pathfinder from the Philippines, had transcended the label of mere athlete back home. She stood as an icon, a breaker of ceilings, and a tangible proof of concept for a country that had never witnessed one of its own climb to the dizzying heights of the global game before. History was made when she became the first Filipino to snatch a Grand Slam trophy, claiming the crown at the US Open girls singles. She shattered barriers, cracking the top 200, then the top 150, relentlessly marching toward the elite 100. For her, stepping onto the court wasn't just about points or purses. It was a crusade to demonstrate that a population of over 110 million deserved a seat at the high table of tennis. Naturally, their orbits intersected from time to time at the massive combined events. The traveling circus of the tour is far more intimate and claustrophobic than the cameras suggest. Everyone haunts the same lobbies, sweats in the same gyms, and eats in the same cafeterias, where legends dine elbow to elbow with rookies, all nursing their wounds in the same ice baths. Rune and Eala moved through these concentric circles, inhabiting the identical, square footage at venues across the globe, yet rarely standing in the exact same beam of light. He was the fiery virtuoso battling for Masters 1000 glory and deep major runs. She was the gritty pioneer, slogging through the challenger circuit and clawing her way up the ladder, earning respect one grueling win at a time. Yet, the element that made their connection so captivating to the observant eye was this. They were essentially the same character played out on two different stages. Both hauled a cargo of national hope that would utterly flatten a weaker spirit. Both had tasted victory way too early and were now steering through the treacherous currents of adult expectations. Both held that scarce alchemy of raw skill and iron will that draws the line between the good players and the legends. And both of them, regardless of what they confessed to the press or kept hidden, intimately knew the solitude of being the only one carrying the flag at the summit, where exposure is total and the burden cannot be delegated. The professional tennis ecosystem, despite sprawling across every time zone and boasting a roster from dozens of nations, operates like a small village. Competitors are always watching. They track scores in the locker room while the physio works on their shoulders. They breathe the same air on practice courts and pass like ships in the night in hotel hallways at 3 in the morning when the jet lag hits hard. They grasp the reality in a way that fans, the media, and even their own blood relatives never truly can, knowing exactly what the warrior on the other side of the net is enduring. Consequently, when a prodigy pulls off something miraculous, when they shatter the glass ceilings or clinch the victories the odds makers said were impossible, the locker room pays attention. Whenever Alex Eala clinched a pivotal victory or shattered a glass ceiling for Filipino tennis, her peers on the tour took notice. They didn't just scan the scores, they dissected the highlights, grasping the magnitude of her rise in a way the casual fan never could. And then there was Holger Rune, Even though they occupied parallel universes separated by gender, tour schedules, and geography, and despite the crushing weight of his own title chase, he was one of the few quietly tracking Eala's journey. The depth of his interest was a total mystery. It flew under the radar of his coaching staff, the press corps, and even the relentless gossip pages. That is, until the interview. Until the precise second his polished media armor cracked, exposing a flash of raw honesty that screamed of something deeper than mere professional courtesy. Because in the world of pro tennis, just like in real life, the unwritten scenes often reveal the most. It is those split seconds when the training wheels come off and the human being peeks out. When a competitor forgets, momentarily, that every syllable is bait for the content machine. We are diving into one of those rare glitches in the Matrix, a story about admiration, the burden of expectation, and two prodigies caught in a spotlight they never quite anticipated. The scenario was painfully mundane. It was the sort of media shuffle Holger Rune had navigated hundreds of times with his eyes closed. Just a standard post-training debrief at a Masters 1000 event, where reporters fish for headlines with cookie-cutter queries, and athletes recite bland, rehearsed scripts that fill the airtime without spilling a single secret. The vibe was low energy, set in a shady corner by the practice courts with the rhythmic thwack of yellow fuzz against strings, providing the soundtrack as the tour ground on. Rune was lounging in his sweaty gear, towel draped around his neck, mentally bracing for 15 minutes of autopilot before getting back to the real grind. The reporter led with the classics, the questions you could print before the interview even started. How is the prep going? Thoughts on the bracket? How is the knee holding up after the last withdrawal? Rune returned serve with the smooth indifference of a veteran. Feeling great. Knee is 100%. Excited for the battle ahead. Clinical, professional, and utterly boring. Then, the conversation took a sharp left turn. Holger, you have mentioned before that you study other young talents to refine your game. Since the women's tour is sharing the venue this week, are there any rising stars on the WTA side that you are keeping an eye on? It was a filler question, pure and simple, a soft lob meant to elicit a generic quote about the future of the sport for a fluff piece. The interviewer likely had the headline already written, expecting Rune to name-drop Coco Gauff, the safe bet, or perhaps Mira Andreeva, the Russian phenom everyone was buzzing about. The usual suspects, the viral names. But Holger Rune went off script. He stopped. And this was not the standard "let me formulate a safe answer" hesitation. This silence had weight. It lingered. His gaze drifted left, that subconscious tell when someone is digging into the archives of their mind, rather than reading off a mental teleprompter. And then, the smile broke. Not the media-savvy grin reserved for sponsorship deals. This was different. It was shy, almost bashful. The expression of a guy caught thinking about something or someone he actually gave a damn about, before he could wrestle his poker face back into place. Alex Eala, he murmured, the name rolling off his tongue with a tenderness that cut through the noise like a knife. What she is pulling off for tennis in the Philippines. It is honestly wild. The way she scraps for every point, grinding through qualifiers and fighting for her spot on the main stage, it is seriously impressive. The reporter, to their credit, caught the scent of blood. You could hear the pivot, the sudden sharpness in the tone, the realization that they had stumbled upon a narrative far more compelling than a knee injury update. Follow her matches? The silence returned. Rune adjusted his posture in the chair, and for a fleeting moment, the facade of the confident top 10 superstar cracked. He looked exactly like a 21-year-old kid who had just been grilled about a girl he clearly spent way more time thinking about than he wanted to admit. Well, yeah, I guess a lot of us do, he started, before launching into a monologue that would serve as the catalyst for everything that followed. Her game is incredibly well-rounded. The way she moves on the court is elite, and her psychological resilience during the clutch points? That is innate. You cannot teach that. It is a binary thing. You possess it, or you do not. And she definitely possesses it. Now, let me tell you why this particular segment stopped everyone in their tracks. It was the precision of his answer. Holger was not just serving up the standard cookie-cutter compliments. He avoided the usual platitudes about hard work or great talent, the hollow scripts athletes recite when they want to sound nice but have never actually watched the other person play. Instead, he was citing granular details of Eala's mechanics and strategy. He pinpointed her footwork and her composure under fire insights you do not glean from scrolling past a 15-second highlight reel on Instagram. This was a comprehensive scouting report from a guy who had sat down and studied her matches plural closely enough to develop a legitimate respect for her craft. Sensing blood in the water and realizing they were sitting on a potential viral sensation, the interviewer pushed harder. "So, have you guys ever hit together or discussed strategy?" RUNE's demeanor instantly changed once more. You could see the realization wash over him. The conversation had drifted into dangerous territory, and he had already tipped his hand far more than he planned. "We have chatted a couple of times when our tour schedules overlap. Just casual stuff in the lounge, you know, but she is super dedicated. I have a lot of respect for that." Then, he dropped the line that would fuel algorithms, ignite group chats, and dominate tennis forums for the next 7 days. "She is going to shock the world. She possesses the toolkit to crack the top 50, and honestly probably go even higher. And once she gets there, everyone is going to understand just how unique a talent she is." Note the phrasing. Once she gets there, not if. The absolute conviction, the specific ranking prediction, and the emotional stake he seemed to have in her rising star. In that split second, a standard press junket morphed into the subject of an intense, week-long digital obsession. The camera kept rolling for a few more minutes, drifting back to mundane subjects like service mechanics and bracketology. But the cat was already out of the bag, or the heart was already on the sleeve, depending on how you view it. The soundbite existed, the inflection had been clocked. That telltale grin was immortalized in 4K. 60 minutes later, the footage hit the web. By hour 2, it was trending across tennis Twitter, Instagram Reels, and TikTok, infiltrating every digital nook where superfans gather to overanalyze the sport they love. 3 hours post-upload, the Filipino fanbase had already gone to work, churning out slow-motion fan edits titled "Holger Rune respects Alex Eala set to sappy romantic ballads." 6 hours in, the rumor mill accounts were blasting out side-by-side collages of Rune and Eala with captions wildly speculating on the subtext of his praise. Holger had inadvertently committed the cardinal sin of modern media training. He had shown a flash of authenticity, a glimpse of something personal that read to the audience as something far deeper than mutual professional courtesy. The online tennis community was preparing to go absolutely nuclear. This was merely the opening chapter of a saga that would ignite arguments over recognition, gender politics in athletics, and the blurry boundary between innocent admiration and parasocial intrusion. Look, if tennis fanatics are world-class at one thing, a skill sharpened during endless rain delays and the dull off-season, it is forensic investigation. So when that interview dropped, and that specific snippet began making the rounds, the fandom mobilized like an elite digital intelligence agency. But rather than cracking cold cases, they were dedicating their processing power to uncovering just how profound Holger's fascination with Alex actually was, and how long this had been flying under the radar. As is tradition, the chaos began innocently enough on the app formerly known as Twitter. A fan account posted the footage with the caption, "Holger talking about Alex with times that times smile. I see you, Holger." The quote tweets started piling up instantly, each user adding a new layer of scrutiny, spotting missed details and connecting invisible dots. Look at that hesitation before he drops her name. He literally said when, not if. I am losing it. You do not talk about a colleague with that look in your eyes unless there is a subplot we don't know about. However, the true detective work, the excavation that would unearth links no one had ever flagged before, started when a user decided to audit Holger's entire social media footprint to catalog every single digital interaction he had ever shared with Alex. That is the exact moment the narrative took a wild turn. Someone dug through the archives and unearthed a snap from 7 months back Alex Eala grinding on the clay courts of Spain. It looked like your typical pro-athlete content. Action shot mid-forehand, generic hustle caption, and the usual brand shoutouts. Totally forgettable stuff. Until you scroll down past 73 other replies to the wasteland where no one looks. Sitting right there was a solitary flame icon dropped by Holger Rune's official handle, a guy with 800,000 fans backing him. At that point, Eala's count was hovering around just 200,000. Usually, a digital high five between pros gets swallowed up by the endless void of the internet. However, paired with his recent comments and how well he knew her playstyle, that tiny symbol suddenly looked like a smoking gun. The sleuths didn't stop there. They resurfaced an Instagram story from 5 months prior, marking her debut win on the main tour. She had linked the event organizers and tossed in a couple of corporate partners, standard procedure. But a leaked screen grab, clearly from someone inside her inner circle, showed Holger Rune's name sitting right at the top of the viewer list. That is data regular users never get to see. Yet there it was. Viral evidence that he had been tracking her journey and keeping tabs on her progress long before anyone suspected a thing. That is when the internet investigators really rolled up their sleeves. Scouring through the back catalog of a professional photographer, they struck gold with a candid shot from the Indian Wells tournament. The focus was supposed to be the empty courts in the foreground, but if you zoomed in on the blurry figures in the back, you could unmistakably make out RUNE and Alex Eala. They were standing by the fence, waiting for a slot, and locked in a deep chat. Smiles all around, shoulders dropped, totally at ease with each other, a moment captured 4 months back. Back then, the image barely scraped together 40 likes, drowning in the sea of generic tennis content. Suddenly, it was everywhere, reposted thousands of times with people dissecting his gaze and theorizing wildly about their topic of conversation. The YouTube creators who thrive on courtside gossip wasted no time. They started churning out content with headlines that screamed for clicks. Holger Rune's secret obsession revealed plastered across one thumbnail, the real reason ATP stars watch Alex Eala on another. The recommendation engines did their job, feeding the drama to hundreds of thousands of viewers who were previously clueless about either athlete. Overnight, legions of fans became emotionally invested in this potential power couple storyline. TikTok transformed into a chaotic factory of theories and fan-made content. Editors stitched together slow-motion clips of RUNE winning points. Then they spliced them with Eala's highlights, overlaying trending audio tracks about hidden love and crushing hard. One clip blew up by analyzing their mechanics side by side, pointing out how eerily similar their stance was. It highlighted their shot choices, implying they must be sharing tactical secrets behind the scenes. After racking up 2.3 million views, the obsession migrated to Reddit, where the die-hard analysts launched a massive thread dubbed the RUNE Eala situation. Subtitle: The Comprehensive Dossier. People mapped out every digital crossover and cross-referenced tournament schedules to see when their paths physically crossed. A user dug up records showing they both spent time at the Moratoglu Academy, sparking theories that their awareness of each other went back years. Another sleuth unearthed an ancient interview clip. In it, Eala talked about sparring with the guys to level up her hitting power. Was RUNE one of those sparring partners? The fanbase in the Philippines was losing its collective mind. Alex Eala was already a national icon for her junior Grand Slam win and her grind up the global rankings. This, however, was a completely different beast. You had a top 10 ATP superstar dropping specific, warm praise that felt way too intimate for a casual acquaintance. Sports pundits in Manila spent hours dissecting the rumors, while morning radio DJs made it their main topic. It transcended sport to become a cocktail of celebrity gossip, romance, and patriotic pride that no one could resist. Yet, the mood wasn't entirely festive. Just as the hype hit critical mass, a wave of criticism began to swell, challenging the ethics of the coverage and exposing the uglier side of the tennis media circus. A faction of Eala's most loyal supporters began asking why this narrative was even consuming so much oxygen. She is a powerhouse in her own right. One viral post snapped, "She does not need a man's validation to matter." The fact that this interaction is what finally launched her onto the world stage is, frankly, tragic. That tweet hit 15,000 likes, igniting a fierce side debate about whether the obsessive coverage of RUNE's comments was actually cheapening Eala's individual glory, framing her worth solely through his opinion rather than her trophies. Danish fans were dealing with their own internal conflict. Some found it charming that their tennis titan was showing a raw, human side, that he was not just a cold competitor, but someone who truly appreciated the game. Others worried it was becoming a massive distraction. Holger needs to focus on his forehand, not the WTA, read a sharp comment on a Danish forum. He has had a rocky season. This drama is the last thing he needs dominating the headlines. Even the tennis press veterans who have covered the majors for decades and seen it all found themselves in uncharted waters. Was this really a story worth reporting? One respected journalist tweeted, "I have been on this beat for 20 years. Players praise each other constantly, but the way RUNE spoke about Eala, that mix of technical respect and personal investment, I have honestly never heard a player describe a peer with that kind of intensity." The rumor mill screamed to a halt when someone realized that both RUNE and Eala were signed up for the same combined event in just 2 weeks. The chance that they might cross paths, field interview questions about the drama, or even be photographed in the same frame while the internet watched became the season's most anticipated storyline. Fan pages started running countdown clocks. 14 days until the RUNE and Eala reunion. Betting markets that usually stick to game scores started taking wagers on whether a joint photo would drop. The situation had taken on a life of its own, spiraling far beyond what either player could have imagined. But then came the twist nobody saw coming. A serious wave of backlash began to swell, with critics forcing everyone to ask if this obsession was actually harmful, invasive, and a glaring spotlight on the deep-seated problems in how women's tennis is covered.